think one challenge when we want to break into a new path, we want to like just consume all the information related to it. But then ask yourself, it's like, hey, like your time is so limited. You're not going to know everything related to product marketing. Like even for myself, who's been in it for the past few years, there are still things that I want to learn too. The best product marketers don't know it all too as well. So don't feel so pressured to having to learn everything.
Tell us about yourself.
Certainly, Henry, first and foremost, thanks for having me. My name is Zach Roberts. I am a product marketing manager at Dropbox. This past year, I've been focused on building out the sales enablement function here at the organization here, working with our B2B audiences and our sellers to make selling easier. Outside of work, I'm usually up at the morning working out at the gym here, or at the weekend here, like just learning how to rollerblade across the city streets of San Francisco. So really excited to be connecting with you here today, Henry.
Prior to product marketing, what was your background?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Before product marketing, right out of college, I started in sales. And so I had the pleasure of starting just from like ground floor sales development, like working with across different industries, different customers. And that was my career path for the following 5 years. Well, moving up the ranks in sales, working in different organizations, from LinkedIn to ed tech startup to recently back then at Fair, a whole retail startup too as well. And one question I do get a lot too as well is that like, okay, like Zach, like what motivated the transition from sales to product marketing, or like what was that common thread? There's two things I love to share to that point. Is that first, even before sales, I was in education. So in my undergrad, I was a tutor. I taught an intro business course. And this leads to my second point, is to find that common thread through your experiences. And for me, from education, sales to what I do today, is that in order to be an effective at any of these crafts, you need to have a clear understanding of your target audience, either in the classroom with your students, as a seller with your prospects or customers, and today as product marketers, like understanding like who is the core customer prospect we want to reach, what do they care about, what are their pains, and based upon that understanding, that helps you build a solution that will resonate with them most.
Can you tell us more about how you discovered product marketing and what made you interested?
In the last few years before I made that transition, I was itching for something more, because whenever we hit a new quota, it was a monthly, a quarterly, I would talk to a manager like, hey, I did it. What else can I do? Go do it again. And it felt like this cyclical motion and felt very repetitive. And I was looking for something more. So what was really cool and being like one benefit of being a part of like a smaller organization or startup, you can pick up a bit different responsibility. So I was helping out writing email templates, like qualification questions, talk tracks, demo scripts. And that was work that, again, brought me back to when I was in teaching too as well, helping our sales team be more effective at what they were doing. And when I was doing some research and talking with some mentors and peers, I learned that a lot of that was similar to product marketing. So from that, back in July in 2020, then I was just like, hey, I want to make a pivot into this career field. And that's what initiated my exploration into breaking into product marketing.
What steps did you take to break into product marketing?
Gosh, it was one of the hardest things I did for my career. In the span of 4 months, I broke into product marketing in October. But then the second thing was that I changed into a completely different industry into cybersecurity. Looking back at what the process was, is that what was that common thread? Before I could understand that common thread, I really put on my sales hat. I was like, okay, if I'm really trying to position myself as a product marketer, or position myself as to hey, I will be your best fit, I need to talk to people who are already in the career I want. I need to really understand how they define it. How did they break into it? What are the challenges they see in their day-to-day? And so I went on LinkedIn and I started having informational interviews. Anyone I saw that had that title, I reached out to. When I spoke to someone, they were product marketing, you're like an internal salesperson. You are here to help sellers be more effective at what they do. Because if sellers can like hit their number faster, that is a derivative of the organization hitting their number and driving revenue too as well. And that was like that's when it clicked. I was like, why would someone want to hire me for their next opportunity? I was like, well, I'm a salesperson. A lot of the content you create is designed for me. So I gave me kind of that foot in the door. That helped me understand my profile. Once I did that, then the second thing I asked myself is that I started looking at like job descriptions, and I started seeing what are the skills that stuck out and where are my strengths. Then I looked at like what were some opportunities. One challenge, like as like a salesperson, and a lot of the work you may do as product marketing is maybe you might be doing data analysis, coming up with hypotheses, like trying to figure out where opportunities and how can you interpret data to help inform your decision making. I didn't do a lot of that in my sales role. So I decided to take on a data analytics course to really hedge my bet and just build up on that competency. So while I was taking that course, still talking to peers, very fortunate in those conversations. It opened up into referrals, and those referrals, it gave me more at bats in those interview processes too as well. And then through those interviews, this is how I eventually met my then manager and my now mentor, who had a similar career path to me. He came from sales. So like just having someone that really understood like what that brought to the table. And my last thing I would share is that one takeaway I've learned is that don't like follow a company, like follow a manager, look for a manager that's going to help you grow you. And I was very fortunate for Elvis back then in taking that bet on me, because that was like the biggest like life-changing decision in making that pivot from sales to product marketing back in October at Tanium.
Can you talk more about the interview process? What was it like for you, and what was the most challenging part of the process?
There was this one piece of advice back in 2013. I was a sophomore in college at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I worked at the financial aid office. And I remember my supervisor at the time, he like came by my desk and he's like, Zach, one thing I notice about you is that whatever project you start, you finish it. You always want to see it through. And I think that's something you should remember. And to help you remember that, one thing I do for my career is that any accomplishment that I achieve, big or small, in what I do, I write it down. I save it. I have it like a list. And then nearly like 10 years later, this is the idea. This is a practice I still do. I call it the win list. So going back to your question, like having a list of your key accomplishments, like whether it's in your job, whether if it's like volunteer work, if it's like extracurriculars you pursue, like have a running list that you save on your desktop, like add to it on a monthly basis, review it quarterly. So like when it was time to come back to like for those interviews, I could look at these experiences and I wrote them like resume bullet points. That kind of helped me think about like, what are some potential resume, like interview stories that I wanted to share in those conversations? I looked at the JD and I looked at those responsibilities. So when I was interviewing at Taney, I was like, okay, like what may they be looking for? Okay, they're looking for someone who's competent in building out sales presentations, like one pagers. They're looking for someone who's an effective communicator or writer. And then when I started looking at that list, I looked less at the job and I looked at more at the skills and asked myself the question, like, okay, how am I doing this in my day to day? Or how have I done this in a prior role? And how can I connect those experiences to as well? Because at the end of the day, when we're preparing for an interview, it's like, think of yourself as the product and the hiring manager is like the buyer, and they are looking for a solution that will best help them solve those challenges. And like the JD is kind of like the requirements. It's a wish list. It's not going to be, you're not going to have everything checked off the box, but like preparing with that mindset then helped me when I was going to those conversations too as well. So if I ever got a question that like you may, I think one question they would ask, like maybe it's like, hey, like tell me about a time you created like a message map or something. I said, well, I haven't ever done like a message map before, but I can walk you through about how I walk through creating customer presentations, how that flow is, how to like get the key messaging down. Where I really shined is that it felt like the questions I would ask after the conversation, because not only was I taking that time to like review my background, look at like my past experience, look at the JD. I had the fortunate opportunity to look at my interviewers' background. So like when they sent it out, what I would do is that I would look at their background, look at their career path, look at like what if there was anything similar in like a similar path. Like one of my interviewers, they went to a school that is well known for teaching. And I asked her about that. I was like, hey, like, I noticed, was this ever a consideration? If so, like, what brought you here? And that was like making that immediate connection. It helped me make that immediate connection. So if it's not like maybe a different, like, maybe you're not from the same area, if you have like similar career paths, similar experiences, but like really trying to understand that individual. It's like, hey, what brought you to this career path today? And then the second thing was like looking at the company. Again, it was cybersecurity too as well. So it was a completely different space for me. But just getting like a basic understanding of what they did and kind of like why that mattered to as well. And like what were those unique challenges that they faced and like asking them in those interview processes. It made it more of a conversation. I think those are the few ways that could really elevate your success in the interview process for product marketing.
In your first role at Tanium, what was your focus as a PMM? And
Yeah.
also, can you talk about what that transition was like?
When I first started, I was like associate product marketing manager, and how that may differ from product marketing manager. This is like a role that typically someone would start like right out of college. And I was starting like 5 years after college too as well. So there wasn't a hard expectation of knowing all the skills. It was like you are gonna learn. And that's what I needed. And that's why I felt was best for where I was coming from, is coming in and learning the product marketing craft. And the decision why I joined is because there were just great product marketing leaders across the board in the team that I can just learn through osmosis. So when I first started, I was part of our risk and compliance um, cybersecurity portfolio. Again, like I told you at first, is that I went into a new career and I went into a new industry. It was very technical. There was terminology. You're talking about like ransomware, like lateral movement, like SOC 2 analysis. All this stuff was like just over my head. When I joined the team, I really leaned on my prior experience from sales. And I asked myself, and I think this, like any of us can do this too as well. When you're onboarding to a new role, you ask yourself, if I want to best connect with my target audience, be it my customer, my colleagues, your colleagues are like your internal customers, more so in product marketing, like I need to understand their world. This is like a learning that's taken away from like Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence Others. It's like I need to understand their world. I asked them, I went on like a mini roadshow where my manager was like, hey, here are people you should talk to on this team. And I remember it was from individuals from like product marketing, from sales enablement to product, from different functions and marketing. And I asked them, hey, like, what do you do? Like, how does this help? How does it help the organization? What motivated you this career path? And then I'll pivot and ask, how do you work with product marketing today? Like, is your what is your perception of product marketing? Like, how can product marketing help you be more effective at what you do as well? So then that gave me an idea of like how I could like deliver quick wins, or give me an idea of what I need to do. And individuals who are directly in product marketing, I would ask them, I'd be like, where do you go to stay like up to date on trends and like market information related to cybersecurity? And I remember one of the leaders, like Eric Christensen, he introduced me to like dark reading, and that was the industry publication. So like for like the 6 months, every day, I would spend about 20 minutes reading articles just from anything I could get my hands on dark reading. Just about like risk and compliance, like security, insider threat, and just really understand like what our target customers and prospects were reading, what like what they were consuming. And then from there, I was reading documentation. I was reading external documentation. My manager started putting me on small projects, paired me with like an onboarding buddy. I would sit in those meetings. I was asking questions too as well, getting a deeper understanding. If there's something I couldn't ask, I would write it down and I would schedule time with them. So I think like the last point I want to say here is that when I was onboarding, transitioning to product marketing, a lot of it, I was taking it as like a seller, like if I'm going to sell my expertise, I need to understand who I'm selling or what I'm selling to or what the problem was. And then from there, like that helped me, that gave me more of a proactive approach on my onboarding than rather than kind of sitting on my haunches and waiting for the information to like fall from the sky.
What do you do now at Dropbox?
I'm focused on our sales enablement function. And this was a very conscious decision from my time at Tanium. Like that past year, I had the opportunity to kind of learn the breadth of product marketing. I remember talking to one of like my mentors. It was like a sit down conversation, my first role at LinkedIn, and it mentions like your career is going to be an ebb and flow. You're going to go into spaces where you're going to get like a broad breadth of a function, and there will be times you're going to specialize. This was an opportunity for me to specialize, and it was exciting because it combined deeper into product marketing and then allowing me to build close relationships with sales, which I had a prior path in, and helping improve that collaboration between our B2B portion of the business. But this past year at Dropbox here, so doing that work. And what does that work look like? Well, before talking about the work, like take a second to talk about sales enablement, is that sales enablement is designed to help selling be more effective for our sellers through the creation of new tools, like either like targeting lists, like who are the customers to go after, assets. So like common ones are email templates, one pagers, or trainings, or like product trainings. Like, hey, what do I need to know about this product? Like, what about our market competition? Like, how do I best position our product against like competitors that our customers may be using? So a lot of that work translated into like sales play campaigns, creating new content collateral, being a conduit to our other product marketers who had upcoming launches out the door, and being taking more of that consultative approach of like, okay, what do we need to ensure that the sellers are prepped, enabled, and can just knock like this product out of the park when it comes out the door. So that's been my work this past year.
How did you become a top 100 influencer and newcomer of the year?
Yeah, no, thank you for catching that, Henry. Like for me, it's a shock that I'm at that stage right now because a year or two before making the pivot into product marketing too as well, I had my friend, his name's Ish Verduzco, and he was that guy. He was that social media influencer, like always sharing his journey, like and like bringing ways of people along on for the ride, and like educating people on like experiences that he learned, that he achieved, or things that like that just didn't work out. And I remember when I made the start into product marketing, I had this aha moment, and I was like, okay, if I want to become a product marketer, why not if I think of my career as a product and figure out to how would I market it? Like how would I build awareness of like my career? How would I help people like understand like challenges and wins, and kind of like why would someone want to hear my perspective? How would this help them too as well? So it started a conscious decision of just starting to post on LinkedIn, and this is what I'm working on. Here are challenges, and just kind of like trial by fire. And then throughout that process, I started picking up some skills and traits. I started following some influencers in space like Devin Reed, who now works at Clary. He launched a LinkedIn course, and then also Justin Welsh. Like you may see him on LinkedIn too as like a solopreneur, just kind of owning that space as well. And I started learning from them too as well. And for like those insights they were sharing, I started trying to incorporate it into my mix, and I try to find my niche, and my niche being mainly about how can I help other individuals make the pivot from like either from not sales, but other career paths to product marketing. How do I talk about like things outside of work, like I'm big on just like mindfulness, like self-care. Like what are some like productivity tips, what are career advice that I can share with people that are a few years behind me? And that is what helped me. Like, I think through that, it was like a way of building community at a time when many of us were still during the pandemic where we couldn't see a lot of people. That is how I started building a, like an online community, making new friends and new connections. And when the Product Marketing Alliance, they're like, hey, like you've been nominated, you've been recognized as a newcomer year of the award. I was like blown away too as well. And then to hear from the nomination and say that you won, and just like thinking back to my journey of when I first started into product marketing, and then later on then to be recognized as one of the top 100 product marketing influencers. I've just been so fortunate of the people that I've had worked with or have met and have had the opportunity to learn from, is that they helped me to get to this place too as well. And just having the ability to kind of share what I've learned when I've like had a face plant moment, things that where I've like, hey, this is like a incredible win. I want to show you how to do it. I'm just so grateful to be in this position too as well. So I think for anyone that is looking to even like have like be at that similar state, is that don't be afraid to share what you learn too as well, because the knowledge you have, you may assume that everyone knows it, but in many instances, they may not know how to approach it the way you do it. And maybe when you explain it in your way, that may be the aha moment for that next person that's looking to get to the place you want to be.
What advice or tip do you have for aspiring as well as new product marketers?
Yeah, like for anyone that's looking to like break into product marketing too as well, the first thing I would say is that figure out like the common thread. Like I said before, what's unique about product marketing is like there's no degree in product marketing at school. A lot of individuals that are coming to product marketing are coming in from different career paths too as well. You need to figure out what does product marketing mean in your own words and how your experiences connect to that. And then once you find that competitive edge, then from there, that makes it easier for you to tell your career story of why you're going to be a fit, why you'll be an excellent addition to your team you join to as well. And then lastly, also think about like, what are like some gaps you may need to fill? I think one challenge when we want to break into a new path, we want to like just consume all the information related to it. But then ask yourself, it's like, hey, like your time is so limited. You're not going to know everything related to product marketing. Like even for myself, who's been in it for the past few years, there are still things that I want to learn too. The best product marketers don't know it all too as well. So don't feel so pressured to having to learn everything. You know, talk to other product marketers in this space. Get to understand as to how they did it. And through those relationships too, that may help you identify opportunities where you too can make your break too. And Henry, like shameless plug, I know you got some amazing resources too as well on this topic. If anyone's interested in learning more about kind of like my path and kind of resources that I built up, check out breakintoproductmarketing.com. And I have like more resources that talk on this topic, and along with what you do, Henry, that could be another resource to tap into.
Thank you, Zach, so much for sharing about your experience, your journey, and all the wonderful advice and tips.
Thank you, Henry, for hosting me here.